It was still there, still running, still helping, still quiet. Someone else replied under the thread. She didn't disappear. She just let the noise pass. I read that comment in the still of the morning, coffee in hand, feet tucked under a blanket, birdsong instead of Slack pings, and I smiled. Because that's the thing about whispers. They don't trend, they don't break news, they don't go viral, but they last. They get passed down, shared in group chats, whispered over dinner tables. They live in the back pockets of people who needed truth more than hype, and in a world addicted to shouting. Sometimes it's the whisper that outlives everything. Some of us weren't built for applause. We weren't born to go viral. We don't wear titles well. We don't pitch. We don't posture. We build in silence. We write in margins. We choose the long, quiet road, the one that doesn't give us trophies. Just truth. And maybe that's you too. Maybe you've had your voice overlooked, your ideas passed over. Maybe someone took credit for something you poured your whole self into, and they smiled while doing it. Maybe you've sat in rooms where your pain was dressed up as a business opportunity. Maybe you've been told your job is to stay grateful, to be agreeable, to shrink just enough to be tolerated, but never enough to be taken seriously. And if that's you, I see you. Not through a screen, not as a comment, but as someone who's felt the same storm roll over them and stayed standing anyway. So here's what I'll ask. If this story made you pause, if it made something in your chest go still, then don't let it end here. Hit the like button, not for me, but so someone else finds this. Drop a comment if you've ever built something in silence, or had to rebuild yourself in silence. And if you're still in that quiet chapter, still writing your story when no one's watching, keep going. They can't erase what they don't understand. They can't compete with what they never took the time to feel, and they'll never be able to steal what you were willing to build alone, because the loudest victories are often the ones that whisper. They shared it without asking for credit, posted screenshots in private Facebook groups, texted it to their sisters, their dads, their friends who'd stopped picking up the phone when the rent was due. It was never about virality. It was about relief. And people don't gatekeep relief. What I'd built in the margins of my life was becoming a quiet movement, one click at a time. I watched all of it happen from behind the scenes. No one knew who made the app. There was no About Us page, no LinkedIn bio, no Medium post explaining the journey. But it didn't matter, because it wasn't about me anymore. It was about them, their stories, their strength, their right to something better than debt dressed up as convenience. Turns out, when you stop trying to be the hero, people start becoming their own. A nonprofit reached out one day, said they'd finally traced the code, wanted to feature the app in a Tech for Good campaign. Interviews, sponsorships, maybe even a keynote. They asked for a photo, a quote, a face. Said the story needed a name to feel real. I read the email twice, then closed it. Not because I was scared, not because I didn't want the credit, but because somewhere along the way, I'd stopped needing it. I didn't build this to be applauded. I built it so people could breathe again. There's a kind of power that doesn't show up in headlines. It shows up in silence. In a mom who no longer hides bills in the glove box. In a teenager who checks his spending before it becomes regret. In a stranger halfway across the country who whispers, finally, after seeing their budget make sense for the first time. That's what I care about. Not the stage, not the spotlight, not a headline next to a photo with good lighting. Because if the only way for something to be valid is for it to be attached to a face, then it was never about the impact. It was about the credit. I turned down the interview, politely, gratefully, but firmly, told them the story didn't need a hero, and that sometimes the most radical thing you can do is let the work speak louder than your name ever could. There was no finish line, no confetti, no dramatic final scene, with music swelling in the background. Just stillness. I moved out of the city that spring, packed up everything that still felt like mine, which wasn't much. A few worn-out notebooks, a laptop with more secrets than storage, and a sense of self that no longer needed permission to exist. Found a place 2 towns over, small, quiet, a porch with chipped paint, sunlight that stayed longer in the mornings, neighbors who wave but don't ask questions. And in the silence, I healed, not all at once, but in the small ways that matter. Cooking without a clock, walking barefoot on cool grass, sleeping without dreaming of inboxes and action items. The app kept growing. Updates went out like clockwork, pushed by a team that didn't need reminders to care. I still check in, still read the emails, still flag bugs when I catch them. But I don't lead anymore. I don't manage. I don't brand myself as a founder or a disruptor or whatever title people chase these days. Because the truth is, I didn't win. There's no victory in fixing something that never should have been broken. But I didn't sink either. And sometimes, that's the win. To survive, to rebuild, to know you never needed their approval to matter. There's a single sentence in the About section of the app now. No name, no backstory. Just a line that reads, "They monetized our pain. We reclaimed the receipt, and that's all the closure I'll ever need." A year passed, quietly. The world moved on, as it always does. New apps launched, new campaigns promised financial empowerment in pastel fonts. Startups raised millions, pitching ethical spending tools with AI dashboards and smiling avatars. One of them caught fire, backed by a VC firm with more buzzwords than boundaries. They called it an emotional safety net for the financially anxious. The headlines poured in: disrupting debt, compassion meets code, the future of humane finance. It looked familiar, too familiar. Same interface logic, same predictive alert model. Even the copy had the same rhythm, just polished, trademarked, VC approved. Reddit caught it first. A user posted screenshots side by side, called it out for what it was: a rebrand, a clone, a corporate echo of something that had never needed a spotlight to work. The thread exploded, and then someone asked, "Wait, what happened to the original app? Where did it go?" No one had an answer, because there was no press release, no shutdown notice, no scandal, just silence. A few of us noticed, but no one said it out loud, because saying it would mean admitting that maybe, just maybe, people were waking up. Then came the news cycle. A Senate subcommittee announced an investigation into predatory lending in fintech platforms. A few influencers began dissecting how they get you to stay broke. One of them name-dropped the mystery app, said it feels like it was made by someone who's actually lived this. I watched from my corner seat as the marketing team panicked. Meetings doubled, budgets froze. The air smelled like burnt coffee and fear. And still, no one looked at me. I kept doing what I always did, running numbers, nodding in meetings, acting like I didn't hear the sirens building just outside the glass walls. They didn't know the quiet app they were trying to counter was already too embedded, because this wasn't a tech war. It wasn't even about market share. It was about trust. And once people realized they'd been manipulated, they didn't scream, they didn't riot, they just opted out, bit by bit, click by click, pattern by pattern. That's the thing about collapse. It doesn't always sound like breaking. Sometimes it just sounds like the sound of nothing. Where there used to be noise, it came on a Thursday. Not with sirens, not with security guards, not with boxes by the door, just an email. Subject line, organizational realignment. 2 paragraphs, 400 names. I wasn't one of them, but he was. The same man who'd laughed in that meeting room, who said poor people don't download apps, who told me to focus on what actually makes us money. He was listed third. No goodbyes, no public acknowledgement. Just like that, gone. By lunch, his office was dark. By 3 p.m., the nameplate had been removed. A silence you could feel in the carpet. People walked past like he'd never existed, the same way they walked past me, 6 months earlier. Funny how fast a face disappears when it no longer fits the narrative. Some people cried, others whispered about severance, about the next wave, about how no one saw it coming. But I did, because I'd been on the other side of silence before. I knew what it felt like to be erased, gently, politely, efficiently. Except this time, it wasn't me. This time, the silence wasn't punishment. It was proof. Proof that you can build something real in the same place that tried to erase you. That sometimes survival isn't loud, it's strategic. And when power collapses, it doesn't announce itself, it just lets go. One email at a time. A week after the layoffs, I got a notification. One new sign-up, an email I hadn't seen in years, but recognized instantly. His, the same man who once called my idea naive, who said, people like that don't need apps, they need discipline. He was now a user, registered through a private email, no profile picture, default settings. But I saw the same data trail I'd reviewed 100 times before. Low credit score, high debt-to-income ratio, multiple missed payments, the same pattern he once mocked, the same spiral we'd built this tool to break. I didn't say anything, didn't block him, didn't track his activity beyond the system's normal limits. I just watched as the app sent him his first alert. A gentle, quiet nudge. You're spending more than you're earning this month. Here's a better path. He clicked it. Maybe out of desperation. Maybe out of curiosity. Maybe because something in him, the part no title could protect, finally understood. And that was enough. Because I didn't build this to punish people like him. I built it to protect people like me. From people like him. And now, he was the one being helped. By something he once tried to bury. That's the kind of irony you don't post about. You don't frame it as a win. You don't brag. You just let it sit there. Like a quiet truth. That finally came full circle. I thought I was building a tool. Just code, really. A patchwork of features strung together by sleepless nights and borrowed courage. But somewhere along the way, it became something else. I started noticing it in the messages, not reviews, stories. A woman who used the app to rebuild her savings after a divorce. A warehouse worker who finally paid off a payday loan he'd been trapped in for 6 years. A college freshman who realized he didn't have to go broke, trying to look successful. They weren't talking about the app like a product. They were talking about it like a lifeline, a small voice in their pocket that didn't sell shame, didn't make them feel stupid, just said, "You're not crazy. You're just in a system that profits from your confusion." And then it started growing. No emails, no meetings, just silence, code, and the soft buzz of my secondhand laptop. I reached out to someone I used to mentor, a developer who'd dropped out of school when his tuition ballooned out of reach. Then another, a single mom who freelanced spreadsheets to survive a medical bankruptcy. They knew this pain, not from reports, but from receipts, from eviction notices, from overdraft emails that hit harder than any insult. I didn't ask for resumes, didn't care about job titles. I just asked one question. Do you remember what it felt like to be punished for being broke? Every one of them said yes, so we built, together, quietly. Over burner Zoom calls, encrypted drives, aliases, and nicknames. We didn't even name the project yet. It wasn't about branding. It was about building something no one could twist again. And during the day, I played my role, sat at my desk, analyzed default rates, downloaded anonymized data for internal use only, ran simulations under the guise of error testing, used the office Wi-Fi. Every keystroke was a quiet refusal. Every line of code, a line they didn't know they'd already crossed. They had taken my voice out of the room, so I found another way to speak. Most people chase dreams in daylight. I built mine in the dark. Between midnight and 4 a.m., when the world forgot I existed. I was alive. I'd get home, drop my keys in the bowl by the door, heat up whatever I didn't finish from lunch, and open the laptop like it was church. The glow of the screen, the hum of the fan. It became ritual, not for glory, not for money, just to build something honest. Every night, I borrowed a few hours from sleep, like they were credit I'd never pay back. We weren't building a product, we were building a defense, one that couldn't be corrupted by sales teams or twisted by marketing copy. Every line of code had to do one thing: protect people from being preyed on. While they ran banner ads for payday loans, we wrote scripts that flagged emotional spending triggers. While they calculated extraction potential, we built a tool that predicted financial vulnerability and gave people a chance to reroute their habits before it became a crisis. I'd test features from inside the company itself, used their Wi-Fi, ran dummy transactions, fed test data through the same channels they used to exploit. Nobody noticed. Why would they? I was just the girl in the back room now, the one whose ideas didn't scale, the one they'd already forgotten. And that's what made it so easy, because the thing about being underestimated, it's the only time they're not watching. We didn't launch with a countdown, no press release, no buzzwords, no CEO on a stage saying, "We're changing the game." Just a silent push to the App Store, under an alias that meant nothing. No logo, no brand story, just 5 words in the description. For people who've had enough. We figured maybe 20 downloads the first day, maybe a couple of dozen broke college kids, or burnt-out retail workers looking for a budgeting hack. But on day 3, someone made a TikTok. A single mom, holding her baby with one arm, scrolling with the other. She said, "This app showed me I was one more overdraft from losing my apartment." No lecture, no shame, just numbers I could actually understand. It went viral overnight. We hit 10,000 downloads in 72 hours, then 50,000, then charts, top 10 in personal finance, beating apps backed by banks and billionaires. No one knew who made it. No one knew who funded it. But everyone who used it felt it. The calm interface. The alerts that didn't scream at you, but gently nudged. The way it never asked for access to your contacts. Never pushed you to upgrade for insights. It just helped. Quietly. Like it had nothing to prove. At the office, I kept my head down. People started murmuring about this mystery app that was eating into our KPIs. One of the VPs called it a digital act of rebellion. I sat 5 feet from him when he said it. He had no idea I was the reason. He just laughed and said, "Probably built by some dropout in a basement." I smiled. Sometimes the truth doesn't need to raise its voice. It just needs to exist. It didn't happen overnight. There was no dramatic crash, no headline screaming scandal, no viral expose, just numbers, soft and steady, like a tide pulling back before a storm. Customer service wait times got longer. Cancellation requests doubled. Return rates crept upward. Quiet rebellion wrapped in refunds. The BNPL metrics, buy now, pay later, they once bragged about, started dipping, not crashing, just unraveling. The ones buried in cancellation reasons, in customer complaint threads, in repayment timelines, from zip codes where groceries go on credit. That's when it clicked. Debt isn't always a mistake. Sometimes it's the product. See, they don't just allow people to fall behind. They engineer it. You build an app that reminds users when to pay a bill. They tweak it to remind them when to spend again. You suggest a feature that rounds down purchases to help save. They laugh. Why help someone save 50 cents? When you could push them into a $50 impulse buy. With a promo code, it's subtle, elegant even, gamified, polished, friendly fonts and soft tones. But at its core, it's a trap. One that smells like convenience, looks like empowerment, and feels like freedom right up until the overdraft hits. There was a file I found, internal use only, ranking customers by extraction potential. That's what they called it. Extraction potential. Not people, not users. Just wallets with habits. And the ones with the lowest credit scores? They were the highest value targets. I sat there, staring at that chart, and felt something harden inside me. They weren't just ignoring suffering. They were optimizing it. A month after I got moved downstairs, I saw the press release. Exciting new product in development. A budgeting tool, targeted toward underserved customers. Same demographic, same pain points, same language I had written into my proposal, word for word. But something was off. There were no caps on credit usage, no late fee alert system, no savings safety net. Instead, it nudged users to opt in for reward-based credit spending, tracked spending patterns, not to help them stop, but to predict what they'd say yes to next. It took my idea and turned it into a leash, wrapped in branding I didn't approve, launched by people who'd never been poor. The UI looked like mine. The slogan was eerily close, but the soul of it was rotten. I remember sitting there, in that dusty little side office, watching them pitch it on the company's live stream. Big grins, buzzwords, round of applause. They called it an empowering experience for modern financial life. And the audience clapped like they were watching a revolution. They didn't build a tool to help people climb out of the hole. They built a shinier shovel to dig it deeper. That day, I didn't cry, didn't yell, didn't even close my laptop. I just stared at the screen and whispered the only truth that mattered. They stole my idea. then weaponized it against the people I built it for. You can only get pushed so far before something inside you stops asking for permission. That night, I opened my old GitHub account, dusted off a few prototype sketches, downloaded an open source budgeting engine I hadn't touched in 2 years. I wasn't thinking about revenge. Not yet. I just wanted to build the version they didn't let me finish. The one that helped, not harvested. I started working after midnight, when the world was quiet, when no one expected anything from me. You ever watch a room full of people laugh at a problem you survived? I have. It was a Tuesday. Gray sky, gray walls, a meeting room with too much coffee and not enough empathy. I was pitching an idea I believed in, an app that could help people like my mother keep track of their spending, avoid predatory late fees, and stop spiraling into debt over things like a busted tire or an unexpected copay. I got 2 sentences in before the first chuckle. 3 more, and someone muttered, "She's designing for broke people." Then silence, then laughter. Someone joked that poor people don't download apps. They just borrow phones to call customer service after the damage is done. And just like that, my idea was dead in the water. Not because it was broken, but because it was inconvenient. Because it suggested that the system we worked so hard to optimize was actually hurting the very people it claimed to serve. That meeting ended with a pat on the back, a nice try, and a line I'll never forget. Let's focus on products that actually make us money, yeah? I walked out smiling, but inside, something broke. Not because they rejected the app, but because they laughed at the people it was meant to protect. And when you laugh at someone who remembers what it's like to choose between rent and groceries, you don't just lose their trust, you make them dangerous. There's a kind of smile people wear in offices like that. You know the one, polished, practiced, perfectly hollow. Everyone talks about wellness, about culture, about how we're a family. But behind the break room kombucha and the pastel mood boards is a war, a quiet one, waged with numbers, masked with charm. See, in a place like that, being poor isn't just unfortunate, it's inconvenient. Struggling with debt, you're financially illiterate. Living paycheck to paycheck? Must be bad choices. Need a break? You're not a team player. The people in charge, they wear Patagonia vests and carry reusable water bottles. They talk about sustainability, while approving campaigns designed to push people into buying things they don't need, with money they don't have. They sip $7 lattes while debating how to extract more value from users who miss payments. They don't see irony, they see revenue, and no one questions it. Because to survive there, you don't challenge the machine. You smile, you stay late. You say absolutely, even when you want to scream. I used to think I was doing good work. I really did. I thought maybe, just maybe, if I played the game long enough, I could change the rules from the inside. But the longer I stayed, the clearer it became. This place didn't want solutions. It wanted stories. Stories that made executives feel clever. Stories that made customers feel hopeful. Right before hitting accept terms and conditions on another loan. And the worst part? Everyone knew. They just smiled. Because the only thing more dangerous than speaking the truth is doing it when you're the only one left who still believes it matters. They didn't fire me. No dramatic meeting, no HR warning, no cardboard box, just a calendar update. My badge still worked. My email still logged in. But the conference invites stopped. The project folders were gone. And when I asked about the app proposal, someone from marketing said, "Oh, we're pivoting that in a different direction now." By Friday, my new desk was on the second floor, across from the printer that always jammed. No windows, no team, just a queue of rejected transactions and late fee breakdowns to analyze. Officially, they called it a lateral move. Unofficially, it was exile, with fluorescent lighting. You'd be amazed how fast people forget you exist once you're not in the room anymore. No more morning catch-ups, no more Slack tags, no more, "we should grab lunch sometime." Just silence, the kind that hums at the edge of insult. At first, I told myself it was temporary, that maybe I'd earn my way back, that if I worked harder, kept my head down, I'd get another shot. But deep down, I knew better. I hadn't just pitched a bad idea. I'd challenged a system that makes money from other people's pain. And systems like that, they don't forget. So I stopped trying to impress anyone. I started reading more reports, following where the money went and where it bled. Because the beautiful thing about being invisible in a company like that, no one sees you watching, no one sees you preparing, no one ever expects that the quiet girl they sidelined is about to become their biggest threat. I used to think debt was a math problem. You spend more than you earn, you fall behind. Simple. But then I started looking at the data. Really looking. Not the numbers we share in reports. Not the ones they highlight in earnings calls.